Okay, so the idea here is that we want to man accelerate into these tremendous creatures. That's why I call the deck Monsters Inc. Now, I also want to note in the deck creation process that the deck I handed over to Patrick for essentially I was doing the research phase of things where I was coming up with deck concepts and deck ideas and trying to optimize Noble Hierarch. And one day, a few days later, Pat called me up and said, "Hey, a new card's been spoiled. It's Ancient Ziggurat. And what do you think about that for your Monsters Inc. design?" Pat was by the way, very encouraging. It's one of the things that's so exceptional about Pat. And, as a sort of as a team captain when it comes to deck creation, is that he knows when to be optimistic and then he also knows when to be practical. And it's very important to be optimistic, especially optimistic at the early stages of testing. We want to that's when we want to kind of shoot for the pie in the sky. That's when we want to see things as glass half full, not half empty. And Pat did a great job of encouraging this deck design. Actually, there was a couple times when I sort of got down on things and I was a little frustrated. I couldn't really see a way to build things quite right. And Pat, Pat would kind of continue on me and say, "Hey, how's Monsters Inc. going? How's that development?" And he would really encourage me. And then finally, when I passed the deck over, sort of the final version over to Patrick and our other teammates, Manuel, Gabriel, and so forth, to do. Although I'm not positive on this, but I think that the primary design on this particular deck, before Brian Robinson put a couple of nice finishing touches on it, the primary design, I think that, and Patrick ended up, doing a lot of work on it. I know that Manuel worked on it a bunch. I believe that Mark Herberholz worked on it a bunch, possibly Mike Jacobs. I'm not exactly sure who is in the mix, but they really took the deck in a different direction. Now, I was trying to involve some stuff with Ranger of Eos in this deck. I remember, weirdly enough, I'm a bit fuzzy on the exact architect I came up with. I do believe that I had something along the lines of Rangers of Eos in this deck and those wacky little Figures of Destiny. Those guys are crowd pleasers. They'll get the job done. And now, obviously, we don't have that in this final version, and I think that's the right call. Another card, I was sort of running around Memphis, and I was so frustrated. It didn't make me feel bad or anything like that, but I was talking to a lot of folks, and Patrick, and even one of Magic's head designers, Matt Place, about how I was just sort of confused how nobody was running Gaddock Teague here, and I really wanted to fit Gaddock Teague in a deck, and I thought, gosh, he's just so crazy. He stops Cryptic Command, which we evaluated as being the uber card of the format. Stops Spectral Procession, and so many other very important cards. Flame Javelin. Just a lot of other cards that are very, very important in the environment. Cruel Ultimatum, and I could obviously go on Broken Ambitions even. And I really wanted Gaddock Teague in a deck, and that was kind of part of my primary motivation for building this deck. Now, the ironic thing is that when Pat finally posted this deck, he actually didn't include Gaddock Teague, and that was probably a bit of an oversight. Now, that was one of the smart moves that Brian Robinson made, which was to put the Gaddock Teagues and the Kitchen Finks back in the deck. And so hats off to him for that. But by the way, I'll sort of let you in. The other smart move that Brian Robinson made was actually playing the deck. None of our teammates actually. We did have some teammates go buck wild and audible to playing Blightning, the red-black kind of Blightning aggro deck. But we didn't have anybody, interestingly enough, we had nobody audible to play this deck. So Brian Robinson, and hats off to his teammates because he pointed out that they helped him. And I mean, for all I know, Brian Robinson had no idea that Patrick posted a deck that was, I want to say, absolutely the exact same mana base as what we're looking at here, and maybe I believe it was 7 cards different from the main deck, but 7 important cards. He put in these Finks, which are just tremendous, and especially the Gaddock Teague. He put those back in the deck in favor of our Ram Gangs and something else. I really don't remember what it is that he pulled out. Maybe we had Bitter Blossoms, but I'm really not sure. I don't think we had Bitter Blossoms because the Ancient Ziggurat doesn't work with them. Anyways, we, essentially what was going on was I really wanted to play with Gaddock Teague, and I wanted to play with the Hierarch. I wanted to get this tremendous advantage early, and from there, I had kind of what I thought was a nifty deck. I passed it on to Patrick and Manuel and the rest of our teammates. I've named a lot of them. And those guys got to work, and they really came up with some special stuff, and they took the deck to a new level. Now, the version I had definitely had Tidal Hollow Scullers and the Teagues. I believe I had Kitchen Finks. But some cards I didn't have, some important ones here. I don't know whether I have Rox Warmonk or not. I presume I did, but I really don't remember. Rafika the Many was one of the early cards that really started changing this deck and taking it to the next level that the guys identified. And they realized, hey, this card can be really big, and it follows a lot of our rules. It's first of all, this is a card that once again you just stop and say, hey, this is wacky. A card like this has never been printed. This card can account for a tremendous amount of damage because he's both exalted and grants double strike right away. In a sense, he's a lot like a creature that has haste, where he can almost attack right away. He's a force to be reckoned with right away. I mentioned that we can do 14 points of damage on turn 3 with this deck, which is just jaw-dropping. How? Well, if we play a turn 1 Noble Hierarch, and then we play a turn 2 Doran the Siege Tower, and then turn 3 we play Rafika the Many, then the Doran, when it attacks, is going to benefit from 2 exalted bonuses, and that's going to give it a 7 toughness, which is going to make it, in essence, a 7/7 attacker because of the Doran's ability. Doran's ability is that each creature assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. And so we'd have what was, in essence, a 7/7 double strike creature because of Rafika the Many. So you can win a lot of games when you do that, just to kind of let you in on a secret. I just noticed that there's no Thoughtseize involved. I'm pretty sure that my versions of this deck had Thoughtseize, so it was a lot like one of these black-white decks, but just with a little bit more pressure and possibly a little bit less staying power. Hard to say. Anyway, they added Rafika the Many, which was just super duper and really, really made the deck so much better, so much more deadly and dangerous. And he also added Wiltleaf Liege. By the way, let me just take a moment here and pull up the deck list. Of course, it can be a bit disorienting looking at cards this way. So at this point, I'm going to show you the whole deck list. All right, here we go. You can see the mana base. I'll talk about the mana base in a second. Another thing I really wanted to do, by the way, with this deck was the return of the Treetop Village. I really love Treetop Village. And, of course, folks are a big fan right now of Windbrisk Heights, and rightly so. That's a tremendous card. But, gosh, I really wanted some muscle. I love Treetop Villages, especially, you have Exalted or these, you can get this Exalted bonus, and they trample, and they can just really, wickety whack people. They can give people the business. Anyway, so let's, having a look at this deck list. Another card, you can take a moment if you want to pause the video. Hopefully you can see this pretty well. What we also had, another nice change, and I'm flipping back to the deck list now. I'm going to kind of move the video here for a second. What they also added, what Patrick and the other guys also added, and it was really tremendous, is this Wiltleaf Liege. And it's kind of a bit of a head scratcher. I can't really explain how it was that we added Wiltleaf Liege, but then somehow took out our Gaddock Teagues and Kitchen Finks. So, once again, hats off to Brian for recognizing that we made a bit of a bonehead choice there. Perhaps if we had been, more focused on the second, we were really quite focused on our 5-color deck, so no regrets. But it is very wonderful for me to see Brian in there and piloting the deck. He went 7-1 in the Swiss with it. Anyway, these Wiltleaf Lieges are just super. They're super for so many reasons. They get around. It's kind of funny, but just the fact that they get around Blightning is pretty exciting. The fact that they double pump so many of the creatures. In this final deck that Brian's playing, they single pump his 4 Scullers, single pump his Birds and his Hierarchs, which is nothing to sneeze at, especially if you have Doran the Siege Tower in play. But they double pump his Finks, Gaddock Teague, give them +2 to each because they're both green and white. Of course, they double pump themselves. Doran the Siege Tower gets really ornery when the Wiltleaf Liege is around. And also our Rox Monks and our Rafika the Many. So you really go buck nasty on people when the Wilt Leaf Liege hits play. And plus, you have cards out there where discard's a real factor. Obviously it's